domestically now, we've seen lawmakers late today vote to subpoena the Attorney General for the way her department has handled the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. You saw a handful of Republicans, right, so people in the president's own party, joining Democrats on the House Oversight Committee to vote to bring Pam Bondi in, including Nancy Mace, the congresswoman on the Republican side. Watch this.
I have a lot more questions, and I don't expect to be talking about the stock market, so she better not bring those notes when she comes to the Oversight Committee.
That's a reference to the previous questioning that Bondi went through just some weeks ago in front of a different House committee on this very thing, where you see here survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse stood. They were in the audience. They were wearing shirts that talked about releasing the files.
Hey guys, Adam is speaking. This is one of those stories that exposes exactly how much trouble the Trump administration is in right now. And I'm not talking about polls or speculation or hypothetical future scenarios. I'm talking about federal judges literally issuing orders that put Attorney General Pam Bondi in a position where she could face contempt of court charges. Real legal jeopardy.
How much do you think the claims of these survivors are worth? As the good congressman from Kentucky just pointed out, there were lots of survivors who had decided, for reasons of their own, never to release their names. That determination was represented to people in Congress, and we built it into our federal law that their names could not be released, and yet you published their names, their phone numbers, their addresses, personally identifying information. If Donald Trump can get $10 billion theoretically from the Department of Justice, how much should these people get for a far worse violation of their privacy rights and a far greater danger established to them in their lives?
Real consequences that could put her in jail. This isn't some distant threat that might happen someday. This is happening right now in January and February 2026. Multiple federal judges across the country are looking at what Bondi and the Justice Department are doing, and they're saying no, absolutely not. They're issuing immediate release orders for detainees. They're warning about contempt. They're threatening sanctions. They're putting Bondi's name directly on court orders.
You're in law enforcement. We've seen all kinds of evidence of crimes. And when we go over to the Department of Justice for the 4 computers for every member of Congress, we see more evidence of crimes. Will you create a joint task force of the Department of Justice and governors and state attorney generals and district attorneys across the country to investigate the crimes that have taken place against these victims and more than 1,000 like them? The DOJ is not doing its job. Will you create a task force with state and local law enforcement to make that happen?
And Bondi is trapped in this impossible position where she's trying to defend Trump's hardline immigration policies while simultaneously dodging federal court orders. It's chaos. It's a legal nightmare. It's the kind of situation where you're getting attacked from every direction at the same time. And the way she's responding to it, the defiance, the social media attacks, the spinning of the story, it's making her look terrified. It's making the administration look completely out of control. It's making them look like they don't respect the courts. And that's what we're breaking down today. Here's what's happening on the ground right now. Pam Bondi is the Attorney General of the United States. She's Trump's top law enforcement official. She's the person who's supposed to be enforcing the law, representing the government in court, defending the rule of law. But federal judges are basically telling her that she's not following the law. They're issuing orders for the immediate release of migrant detainees being held under Trump-Bondi immigration policies. These aren't suggestions. These aren't polite requests. These are federal court orders, binding legal commands. And when you don't follow a federal court order, you can be held in contempt. You can face sanctions. You can face criminal penalties. You could actually go to jail. We're talking about serious legal consequences here, real jeopardy. The judges are making it crystal clear about what's at stake. They're warning that if Bondi's team doesn't comply with these orders immediately, they will face contempt charges. They will be held responsible. They will have to answer to the court. The court is not playing around. The court is dead serious. And here's the wild part that makes this even crazier. It's not just the judges coming after Bondi. She's also facing criticism and pressure from Congress at the same time. The House Oversight Committee is sending letters to her. They're demanding explanations for what the Justice Department is doing. They're hinting at possible obstruction charges. They're suggesting the DOJ is misusing resources and not following the law. That's creating a perfect storm around Bondi where she's getting hit from multiple directions simultaneously. The courts are ordering her to do things and threatening contempt if she doesn't comply. Congress is investigating her and hinting at possible charges, and she's responding with defiance and spin instead of actually complying with the court orders like she's supposed to. She looks like she's running scared. She looks like she's panicking. She looks like she knows she's in trouble. And honestly, when you look at the details of what's happening, it makes complete sense that she would be panicking because she is in real legal trouble. This is not exaggerated. This is not speculation. This is real. Here's what makes this situation even worse for Bondi and the Trump administration. She's not just facing court orders and congressional investigations. She's also facing a huge backlash over her social media posts. She's been posting defendants' names and photos on her official Attorney General account. She's been using her position to attack migrants and defendants. She's been turning individual legal cases into political spectacle. Judges are looking at this and saying this is completely unacceptable. This undermines fair trial protections. This violates due process rights. This turns individual cases into political theater. This is the kind of thing defense attorneys say violates basic due process rights. This is the kind of thing that gets ethics complaints filed against lawyers. This is the kind of thing that gets people disbarred. And Bondi is doing it anyway. She's using her official position as Attorney General to wage political war on individual defendants. She's using social media to attack people who are before the courts. She's using her massive platform to influence cases. And judges are looking at that and saying, this is not acceptable. This violates the norms of the Justice Department. This violates due process. This violates basic legal ethics. So they're coming down on her hard. The story here is really about the fundamental clash between Trump administration power and judicial oversight. It's about what happens when the Attorney General tries to use the Justice Department as a political weapon instead of as a neutral law enforcement agency. It's about what happens when you don't follow federal court orders. It's about what happens when you defy judges. And it's about how Bondi is responding to that pressure with more defiance instead of compliance. That's making the situation worse, not better. The more she defies the courts, the more judges are going to come down on her. The more she posts on social media, the more criticism she's going to face. The more she tries to spin the story and blame the judges, the more obvious it becomes that she's in real trouble. And Trump is watching this happen, and he's not helping her. He's letting her twist in the wind. He's not publicly defending her. He's not standing up for her. He's not using his political power to support his own Attorney General. So she's out there alone facing federal judges, facing Congress, facing the judiciary, and she's basically on her own. That's a bad position to be in. This is wild. This is absolutely wild. This is the Attorney General of the United States potentially facing contempt of court charges. This is the top law enforcement official in the country being told by federal judges that she's not following the law. This is unprecedented in modern American history. And this is happening in real time right now. Let's break down what's actually happening legally. Pam Bondi is the head of the entire Justice Department. She oversees federal prosecutors in every district across the country. She sets policy for how the government prosecutes cases. And she's running the Justice Department in a way that's very closely aligned with Trump's immigration agenda. Trump wants mass deportations. Trump wants aggressive enforcement of immigration law. Trump wants the government to go after immigrants with maximum force, and Bondi is trying to deliver that for him. That's her job. So the Justice Department under Bondi is aggressively going after migrants. They're holding people in detention. They're pursuing aggressive deportation cases. They're trying to enforce Trump's hardline immigration policies at full speed. But here's where the serious problem comes in. Federal judges are looking at these cases and they're saying that the way the Justice Department is handling these detentions is actually illegal. They're saying that migrants are being held without proper legal process. They're saying that the detentions violate habeas corpus protections. They're saying that the Trump-Bondi approach to immigration enforcement is unconstitutional. So judges are issuing habeas corpus orders. These are some of the most powerful court orders in the entire American legal system. A habeas corpus order is basically saying, you have to release this person immediately because they're being held illegally. The government doesn't have the legal authority to hold them. The detention is unconstitutional. When a federal judge issues a habeas corpus order, that's not a suggestion. That's a command. That's a binding legal order. You have to comply with it or you're in contempt of court. Multiple federal judges across the country in different districts are issuing these immediate release orders for migrants being held under Bondi's immigration policies, and the Justice Department under Bondi's direct leadership is not complying with these orders. They're fighting the orders in higher courts. They're appealing them. They're trying to find ways to avoid complying. They're asking for stays. They're doing everything they can to avoid releasing the people that the judges order them to release. And that's putting Bondi in serious legal jeopardy, because when you don't comply with a federal court order, when you repeatedly ignore what a judge tells you to do, when you defy the judiciary, a judge can hold you in contempt. A judge can impose sanctions. A judge can even refer you for criminal prosecution. One case, Ronnie C versus Pam Bondi and others, the court issued an order on January 26, 2026, saying that Bondi and her team must comply with the release order immediately. And the court said they must show cause why they should not be held in contempt. That's explicit language. The judge is saying you need to follow this order now, immediately, or you need to explain in writing why you shouldn't be held in contempt. That's putting Bondi personally on the line. The judge is naming her as a respondent. The judge is saying that if you don't comply, you could be held in contempt. And contempt of court is serious. You can go to jail for contempt. You can spend months or years in jail. You can be fined millions of dollars. The judge is making it crystal clear that if Bondi keeps defying federal court orders, that's what she's risking. But here's where it gets even more complicated. She's also using social media to attack defendants and promote the Trump administration's narrative about immigration enforcement. She's posting names and photos of migrants. She's turning individual criminal cases into political spectacle. She's using her position as Attorney General to wage a political campaign against immigrants before they've even had their day in court. Judges are saying this violates due process protections. This undermines fair trial procedures. This violates fundamental rights. This is the kind of thing that gets ethics complaints filed. This is the kind of thing that violates professional standards. This is the kind of thing that could get a lawyer disbarred. So Bondi is getting hit from multiple directions at once. Federal judges are issuing orders she has to comply with or face contempt. Federal judges are criticizing her for using social media to attack defendants. Congress is investigating her for possible obstruction. And how is she responding? She's doubling down. She's posting more on social media. She's being more defiant toward the courts. She's attacking judges and critics instead of addressing their concerns. She's doing the opposite of what she should be doing. If you're being told by a federal judge to comply with a court order, the smart thing to do is comply. The smart thing to do is stop posting about defendants. The smart thing to do is work with the courts to resolve disputes. But Bondi is not doing any of that. Think about what this means strategically. If Bondi keeps defying federal court orders, eventually a judge is going to hold her in contempt. That's not hypothetical. That's probable. If you keep telling a federal judge no, eventually that judge is going to hold you in contempt. That's how the legal system works. And once you're in contempt, you're in serious legal jeopardy. You could face criminal charges. You could face sanctions. You could be fined. You could be jailed. And that creates a massive crisis for Trump. If his attorney general is held in contempt, that sends a message to the entire world that the Trump administration is not following the rule of law. That's the kind of thing that could fuel impeachment discussions. That's the kind of thing that could turn moderate Republicans away from Trump. That's the kind of thing that could change the dynamics of 2026. Congress is already starting to move in that direction. The House Oversight Committee is sending letters to Bondi. They're demanding explanations. They're asking about obstruction. They're looking at whether the DOJ is misusing resources. If Bondi gets held in contempt by a federal court, that's going to give Congress ammunition for more aggressive investigations. That's going to give them justification for potential impeachment hearings. The first major point here is that this shows the limits of executive power when it comes up against the judiciary. Pam Bondi is one of the most powerful people in the Trump administration. She runs the Justice Department. She has hundreds of thousands of employees. She controls federal prosecutors across the country. She has immense power. But that power has limits. One of those limits is federal court orders. When a federal judge issues a court order, the Attorney General has to comply. That's not optional. That's the law. The second major point is about the specific legal jeopardy Bondi is in. She's not just violating court orders in some abstract sense. She's risking contempt of court charges, which is real with real consequences. If Bondi gets held in contempt, that's unprecedented in modern American history. That's the top law enforcement official being told by a judge that she's not following the law. The third major point is about how Bondi is responding. Instead of complying with court orders, she's doubling down. She's using social media to attack defendants. She's attacking her critics. She's spinning the story. She's acting like the courts don't matter. That's the exact wrong approach. That's making judges angrier. That's giving Congress more ammunition. That's creating a narrative that the Trump administration doesn't respect the rule of law. The fourth point is about what this means for 2026. If Bondi gets held in contempt, the entire narrative around Trump's presidency changes. It's no longer about policies or agenda. It becomes about whether Trump's government respects the rule of law. It becomes about whether the administration is willing to follow the Constitution. That's a narrative that's very damaging for Republicans heading into 2026. Moderate Republicans, suburban voters, independent voters care about the rule of law. They care about the Constitution. They care about whether the government is following the law. If Trump's administration looks like it's above the law, that's going to push those voters away. That's going to move them toward Democrats. So this Bondi situation is not just about her legal jeopardy. It's about the broader political landscape. It's about whether Trump's government can maintain any sense of legitimacy with moderate voters and with the legal system. Right now, based on what's happening, the answer is probably no. The contempt charges are coming. The legal jeopardy is real. And that's going to create a crisis that ripples through the entire Trump administration and through the 2026 midterms.